Hey, badass business owners. Today we're going to talk about, are you pricing your handyman services correctly? Because a lot of times people think it is just about how much you put into your pocket. That's how you base your prices is, hey, this is what I want to make and this is what I'm going to price it at. Well, the problem is your pricing really needs to be based off of two things. One, a fair wage for you, the doer, and making sure that you get paid as the business owner, because the business owner gets paid only if the business is profitable. So when you're setting your prices, you need to make sure that you are covering both of those. Don't worry, we're going to jump into this more, because in this video, we're going to talk about how to price correctly. All right, now here's what most handymen do is they tend to price to their competition, and they just say, hey, this is what my competition is pricing, so this is obviously what I need to price. They also tend to undervalue their services and what it is they bring to the table, and they also fail to account for all the costs and expenses when setting their prices, and we're going to dive into this one a little bit more here in a few minutes. Now, when you do these three things, it leads to lower profits. And when you have lower profits, this means you're not making as much money as you should, because it means that you are not priced correctly. Now, when it comes to the competition, here's the things that we tend to see is that we create this race to the bottom, and everybody wants to price to beat the other guy and to be lower than the last person. Well, the problem is it hurts the entire industry because it pulls the entire industry down, and nobody now is getting paid what they should be getting paid. It also does not account for your business needs. Let's face it, you're running a business, not just doing a job. So it's important that when you're setting your prices, you're able to cover the business needs. And speaking of which, who even says your competition is profitable? If they don't know what the hell they're doing, why are you chasing them? Why are you following their prices when they're not profitable and your goal is to be profitable? Because when you undervalue what it is that you do for, you tend to fail to account for the experience that you bring to the table. Yes, when you first start out and you're learning how to do certain things, you're probably going to be a little bit lower. But as you gain experience and you get better at your craft, well, guess what? You can charge more for that, because it also doesn't account for the technical side of the business. There are some things that handymen do that you really need to understand, especially when you can blow up somebody's house, burn it down, or flood it out. It's important that you understand that. It also doesn't account for the quality of service. Not everybody's created equal when it comes to the customer service part of the job. If you're creating a great experience full of great customer service, you're going to be able to charge more for your services. Because remember, people will pay for value at the end of the day. Yes, they want the cheapest prices they could get, but at the end of the day, they want value, and they will be willing to pay for it. It's up to you to convey that value to them. Now, what typically happens when a handyman is going to set their prices is they tend to take up all the materials that they're going to use on the job, and then they just guess how much money they want to make, and then based off of how much money they want to make plus the cost of the materials, they just slap a price on it. And that typically is going to look something like this. They set the price at $200 because they know that the materials are going to cost $145, and they're like, yeah, I want to make $55. I want to make $50, but I'll round up to an even $200. And that's how they come up with the $55. And that's how they typically price. And this might sound familiar to some of you because you were probably guilty of doing this same thing. But we're going to talk about taking it to the next level, because your prices must also account for two core things. They must account for your monthly expenses. You have a lot of bills that are due at the end of the month or throughout the course of the month. Your prices need to cover that, because out of that $55, you have to still pay your bills for the business. And you need to be paid as a laborer in your business. It's really important that you understand that you get paid two different ways. One as the doer and one as the business owner. So when you're setting your prices, these two things must be accounted for separately to ensure that you are pricing correctly. And all of this needs to be done before you will even have a business profit. So when you're taking that $55, you don't even know if you're going to be profitable yet. Now, the number one calculation that I preach to everybody is a really simple one. I weed out all the other garbage, and it is just memorize this. Sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals your profits. This is how your profit and loss income statement flows, and this is how you should be setting your prices. If you can remember this simple little thing, sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals profits, it's going to help you with making sure that you are priced correctly. Now, let's take a look at what that should look like when you are setting that price. So remember, you picked that $200 for that service. Well, if the materials are $100 and you have to add that fair wage, because that's also part of your cost of goods. And let's just say a fair wage is $20 an hour. Now, this isn't what you feel you deserve, but if you were to hire someone off of the street, what would you pay them? Would you pay them $20 an hour to do it? That's the kind of number we want to use, not what you feel you're worth $50 an hour, because you feel you're worth $50 an hour because you're the business owner. Well, remember, you get paid as the employee and you get paid as the business owner. So the first person to get paid is going to be the doer in the business at that fair wage. So we're going to say it's $40. So together, your cost of goods are going to be $140. Now, when we look at expenses, the business owner out of that $200 is going to need $40 more to pay the expenses. Now, you're probably wondering, where do I get this number? Don't worry, we're going to cover that here in a few minutes. But when we're pricing, we know that we need to account for that, so that number is put in there, which really means that this item that the service that you just priced has a $20 profit. Okay, this is the profit that's actually there when you take the $200 minus the $100 for materials, minus the $40 for employee wages, minus the expenses. The actual profit is $20. But I know it's a little confusing, but hang in there. We're going to break this down because I'm going to explain these two things really quickly to you. One is that fair wage. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the expenses and where does that come from. Now, when we're looking at our cost of goods, you notice there were two things in there, right? One is the materials or ingredients, depending upon your type of business, because I know other people will be watching this as well. So any materials, ingredients that you use, that's part of your cost of goods. And then it's a fair labor wage for the doer of the service. And once again, I want to reemphasize, this isn't about some number you feel you are worth. It is about somebody in that industry. If you were to hire someone off the street, what would you pay them? Is it $8 an hour, $15 an hour, $20 an hour, $25 an hour? What is a fair wage to pay somebody for that? And the reason that you're doing that is because at some point in the future, you may have to bring someone aboard to help you out, and your prices need to automatically have this built in there for you to be able to maintain your profits as a business owner, because they're going to have to get paid, and it's the right thing to do. So make sure that you have a wage in there for a fair labor wage. Now, we just talked about why we need to include that labor in those cost of goods, because remember, once again, you have two hats you wear. One is your employee hat versus your business owner hat, and if it's not you, it's going to be someone else, and it's important you keep that in mind. Now, you're probably going, okay, Tammy, great, I think I got that part, but expenses, how much do I put in there for expenses? How did you come up with that $40? Well, let's take a look. Well, for those of you that have a profit and loss income statement, it's actually right here. You want to take your year-to-date one, or maybe your end of year last year, because your expenses are going to kind of vary month to month, because sometimes you pay them items quarterly or once a year or whatnot, and you kind of need to know a number. But if you look under your profit and loss, there's a section called operational expenses, and there's a percentage that you can get by looking. This one happens to be January through November, but it's going to give us a pretty good idea. And this particular business is sitting at 23%. And that's the best way to be able to get what you typically are doing today is if you have a profit and loss. Yeah, I get it. Some of you don't have one of those, or you haven't gotten one yet, or you haven't created one, or your bookkeeper or somebody hasn't provided to you. So let's just say you don't have one. How do you figure out this number? It's actually pretty simple. You just move over to Plan B. And what you're going to do is you're going to take all of your monthly operational expenses. Remember, monthly operational expenses are any other bills that you pay that are not associated with the cost of goods. So if it has nothing to do with the making of the product or providing the product or giving to the customer or the client, then it's going to go into here. So this is going to be like your utilities, your advertising, equipment, everything else except for those cost of goods. So any other money that you spend in your business, you're going to add all that up. What does it typically run a month? All right, so some months are going to be higher than others, but don't forget insurance, by the way. But you're going to add all of that up and you're going to figure out what it is. So let's make an assumption here. We're going to take a business that averages about $3,000 in sales a week. Remember, this isn't profits, this is sales. So when they add up all their jobs, they typically do about $3,000. And if you do about $3,000 every week, then let's just say a month has got 4 weeks, and that's going to be about $12,000 a month. Now, when you added up all those operational expenses, it came out to $1,800 a month in monthly expenses. So you can take these two numbers and figure out what your percentage is. So what you're going to do is you're going to take those expenses, the $1,800, and divide it by the sales of $12,000, and it's going to tell you that your operational expenses run about 15%. Now, most people, depends. The smaller the handyman, it's probably going to be 10-15% in most cases, unless you just don't have a lot of sales, then that percentage is going to go up. But the more sales you have and the lower you keep your expenses, the lower this number gets to get. So it's going to be different for everybody. A lot of people have them at 25. Some people are as high as 50%. So you need to figure out what your particular number is, because your sales are going to dictate a lot of what that percentage is at the end of the day. Now let's pull this all together. And what's the best way for me to set my prices? So we're going to use the sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals profit method to price. Now, remember, we thought we were going to get about $200. So all we got to do is plug in the numbers to see if this even works. So let's take that exact same example of something that the handyman's going to do and is going to be $200. Well, the cost of goods is going to be $145 for materials. But they also know they need to put in their labor hours, right? So when they put in the labor, it's $40. 2 hours times $20, $40. So that meant that the entire cost of goods is going to be $185. And this, by the way, goes back to that original example that we used when they thought they were making $55. So cost of goods, $145 plus the $40 for the labor equals the $185. And because we now understand our expenses better, we know we need to set aside $30 for expenses. Remember, it was 15% that we calculated out. So 15% of the $200 of that sale, because everything's a percentage of sales. So 15% of the $200 has to be set aside. So that makes $30. So what's the profit look like? Oh my gosh, guess what? That handyman is losing money. They're actually losing $15 on this particular service that they were going to provide, because the $200 minus the $185 minus $30. Now you're probably asking yourself, how did they go from $55 of making money to all of a sudden losing money? And it's going to be here, because as the employee, they were paid the $40, but they still had to come out of their pocket for $30 more for additional expenses that they're going to have to do later. So yeah, they put the $55 in their pocket, but then at the end of the month when they went to go pay their bills, guess what? They had to pay out of their money that $15 because they didn't set it aside for those expenses. So ultimately, that pricing was horrible because the price was way too low and it didn't cover all of the expenses that this business owner had. And this is very critical for you to remember, is this particular section right here. Now let's just say that they adjust the price. They do the basic calculation. They realize, ooh, gosh, I'm going to lose $15. Well, I think I'm going to bump this up to $250. Maybe that's the better price. So once again, all the handyman has to do is go back and plug in the numbers. So we had $40 for labor because that didn't change, right? Still 2 hours, $145 for materials because that didn't change. So the cost of goods is still $185. Now the expenses do tweak a little bit because everything is a percent of sales. So now we just have to take the 15% of the $250 and that number comes up to $37 because at the end of the day, they still have to pay those prices. So now, could you still stick with the 30 to get an idea? Yes. But if we want to stay true to our percentages, we always have to stay true to what the actual top line percent is. And in this case, it's $250 times that 15% makes it $37. And when we do the whole entire thing, look at this, we now have a profit because now this handyman has a $28 profit because the $250 minus the $185 minus the $37 is now going to give them a $28 profit, which is exactly what we want. Now, please, 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 I cannot stress this enough. Capture your time as an employee in your pricing, because when you do, it's going to help give you better pricing. Because remember, you get paid as an employee for the work done, which is that fair wage, and then you get paid again as the business owner, but only off of the success of the business. The original pricing, they were not being successful. They were going to have to pay out of their own pocket to make that up. Now, also important for you not to forget, your profits do not go straight into your pockets. So whether that number is $28, $50, $10, it doesn't matter, because your profits in the business, because you're wearing your business owner hat, profits go to three things. One is retained earnings, money that you're leaving in the business to grow the business, to buy more tools, to pay for things in the future. Retained earnings. Taxes, yes, off of your profit is what you get taxed on. So some of that money needs to be set aside for your taxes. And then finally, the money that you take out for the owner. So you might go to the school of a third. You might say, I'm going to leave a third of all my profits in the business so I can grow and build the business. I'm going to put a third away for taxes just to be safe. And I'm going to take a third to put in my pocket. But basically, at the end of the day, just remember that your profits go to three different things. And it's important for you to remember that. folks, I cannot stress to you enough, it's important for you to know your business numbers. I've got a course down below that you can watch and go to, but videos, I'm going to keep making them because it's so important that you understand your business numbers. And something like this, your profit and loss statement has all those answers for you, which is why you really want to understand those things. And remember, the number one calculation I preach over and over, sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals your profits. Memorize that. You don't have to memorize all the other stuff, but you do need to memorize this because this is going to help you out more than anything else. Because by knowing your business owners, you now have really created that business and not just a job. Way too many handymen have just a job because they've never treated it like a business. And what we're trying to do by learning our business numbers is to realize it is a business. Because when you treat it like a business, now you can reap the rewards of the success of the business, which is exactly what you're trying to do. And if you want to learn more about your profit and loss, there is a video over here for beginners on learning the profit and loss. Plus, there's a playlist that I can link below for your profit and loss for you to learn that. And if you want a little bit more on pricing and pricing correctly, we do have these couple videos right here for you as well. And if you like what you see, please hit that like button so people know they should really check out this video. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos that I will be putting out. With that, thank you for hanging in there, and hopefully this helps you with your pricing.